refrigerator Perry and just how hard he hit. And my mama told me homecoming games are the best. On the banks of those late fall, late cartwheel sunsets. I wanted to be just like Jeff Davis when I grew up, tackling Seminoles and Bulldogs, playing football in the mud. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981. Make those Death Valley lights shine brighter. And for good luck, we got Howard's Rock to beat the hell out of them old Gamecocks. It's a damn good day to be a Clemson Tiger. I feel really sorry for our sisters to the south, 'cause they come up here every other year and get punched in the mouth. Oh, and every home Saturday, it gives us the chills to watch those boys in orange run together down that hill. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981. Make those Death Valley lights shine brighter. And for good luck, we got Howard's Rock to beat the hell out of them old Gamecocks. It's a damn good day to be a Clemson Tiger. Oh, somewhere up in heaven, Gaines Adams makes a sack, and that old Banks McFadden is the best damn running back. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981. Make those Death Valley lights shine brighter. And for good luck, we got Howard's Rock to beat the hell out of them old Gamecocks. It's a damn good day to be a Clemson Tiger. It's a damn good day to be a Clemson Tiger. Everybody, damn good day to be a Clemson Tiger. Oh yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Tuesday to everybody. I want to apologize first off for the technical difficulties there. I forgot to change my Wi-Fi setting. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Thanks everybody for stopping in. It's Tuesday. It's my favorite stream of the week outside of doing an actual college football game, because it's been a few days since we've talked, and there's always a lot to talk about. This is my favorite week of the year in all of sports. Forget Super Bowl Sunday, forget the World Series. I mean, forget everything. Outside of Clemson playing in a national championship game, nothing compares to rivalry week in college football. Nothing. So we're going to get into a lot of the different rivalries. We're going to talk about a lot of different rivalry games. We'll talk about picks against the spread, and I'm going to start out with the rivalry between my beloved Clemson Tigers and the USC Junior Gamecocks. I'll give you my my lifelong history with this rivalry. I'll give you my thoughts on this rivalry, and all of the above. Before I do any of that, before I get to whoever's here in the chat, I do want to make a couple of announcements, some things that have been asked. Number one, first of all, my channel has finally been monetized. That probably doesn't mean anything to anybody. It means a lot to me. It's been a year-long struggle to try to get this channel monetized. It should have been monetized about 8 months ago, before YouTube changed their policy on how you can monetize your channel, or what it takes to be monetized. What can you do to support the channel other than visiting the Patreon page in the description? You can do super chats are now accepted, and that means you can donate by clicking that $ in the chat box there directly through your Apple iTunes account, or I think if you're on Android, you can use like your Google Play account to do that. What that does is sends me whatever monetization you donate, as well as highlights your comment, and we'll put it on the screen. There's my first one ever. Hound Dog. There he is, right there. That's what it looks like. Thank you, Hound Dog. I really appreciate that. You will forever go down in the history of Pigskin Pete's YouTube channel as the first super chat donator. So I really appreciate that, sir. What else was I going to say? Oh, this weekend, everybody's asking which game will I be live streaming for Rivalry Week. My first game I will be live streaming during Rivalry Week will be Ohio State and Michigan. Really looking forward to doing that. Volunteer Road Catfish from Volunteer Roadshow coming through with the $14.99 donation. Catfish. I spoke to Catfish earlier today for a while, and he helped me get this all set up. And Catfish is not only a great YouTuber and a great person, but has been one of my closest friends on YouTube since I've come on YouTube. He's had me on a show when I had like 10 subscribers. Got me a lot of people, directed to my channel. And for anybody who doesn't know anything about Catfish, you probably all do. But just one of the best people on YouTube by a long shot. And I'm forever grateful to him for everything he's done for me. And I hope that I've contributed to him in some sort of way as well. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Catfish. I appreciate it. So anyway, this weekend I will be doing Ohio State and Michigan. That game is at noon, so I will be going on live right around probably about 30 minutes early, so maybe 11:30, 11:45-ish. And I expect that to be a great game, and so I hope it is. And we'll get into that game in a second. Let me go through the chat here and see who's in here and give some shout-outs, and then I'm going to get right into the rivalries here. SEC Football Tube. A Gamecock fan. Good afternoon to you, sir. Air Max the Legend Killer. Comic Dude 45. Let's see here. Tiger Nation, my man, in the house. Delta Charlie, how you doing, sir? Delta Charlie's at work. Don't get caught watching the Pigskin Pete YouTube channel at work, sir. Or maybe you can. I don't know. Or tell the people at work about it, too. Maybe they might want to subscribe as well. SC Tiger Fan 803. How you doing, sir? Good afternoon. Welcome to the stream. I'm sure if you're here, you're amazing and fantastic. Otherwise, you'd not be here. Clemson Jacob. Billy Dawson, my other man. NASA CGI Snake says Pigskin Pete went to the store to get more Keystone Light. You know what? The store is actually out of Keystone Light, so I had to settle for Dilly Dilly. Oh, that reminds me. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, too, while we're at it. So there will not be a stream Thursday, obviously, because Thursday's Thanksgiving. So, this will be the last one we do until Saturday, more than likely. Unless I somehow figure out a way or a time to live stream the Oklahoma and West Virginia game on Friday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that yet, but if I can find a way to do that, I will. I've had a few people ask about that. DeGoat Watson in the house. Mark Dudley, my Michigan fan, man. And Mark Dudley will be interested to see what I have to say about this rivalry game between him and them and Ohio State. Notre Dame Nation says Notre Dame making a statement. Yes, they did. They made one hell of a statement, sir. They were very impressive. Dennis Wilson. He says, it's a damn bad day to be a Clemson Tiger, sir. No, there's no such thing. Sorry, sir. And I'm way behind these comments. I'm trying. Jamie McCaslin, how you doing, sir? He says, what's up, Pete? What's up, Jamie? And I think I'm going to... Herbert Bradford, Tomato Mouth. Taters going down. Yeah, okay. So... I'm about to run off. DeGoat Watson with the super chat as well. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Go Tigers. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate the super chat. And he also, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, sir, as well. DeGoat Watson is a longtime subscriber here, one of the originals. And so, despite the fact that he's a Clemson fan, he's also my man as well. So now that I've got the pleasantries out of the way, Nick Bro, how you doing? Now it's time to really piss some boom chickens off, isn't it? So a lot of people out of the state of South Carolina may not realize what this rivalry means. There's a lot of great rivalries in college football that are known throughout the country, right? Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl, Michigan, Ohio State, right? One of the best rivalries in college football. I mean, you can go through any state and you'll hear of rivalries that mean a lot to the people in the state. Well, I'm here to tell you the South Carolina-Clemson rivalry, even though it's not much of a rivalry anymore, it's more of a domination. It has been for a long time. I mean, these two teams have played each other 113 times in a row. The record is 69-42-4 in Clemson's favor. I mean, that's a domination. So the best thing that the Boom Chickens have ever accomplished in the history of all of their football program is beating Clemson 5 times in a row when Steve Spurrier was there early in Dabo Swinney's tenure as head coach there. But despite all of that, there's a lot of hatred between these two teams. There's a lot of hatred between the fan base. And that extends to me. That extends to my friends. I have a lot of friends who are South Carolina fans. I'm not going to go through the history of my Clemson fandom. I've done it before. Enrolled in Clemson in the mid-'80s when I was just 5 years old. She was a cheerleader there, or a dancer, whatever, rally cat. And I've been a huge Clemson fan ever since. I also had an older brother that went to Clemson. He's 4 years older than me. I mean, but I have had friends throughout high school, age and beyond, that went to South Carolina or are South Carolina fans. So I don't hate South Carolina fans necessarily, but I do hate South Carolina's football program. I do hate what they stand for. I think that they're trashy. I think that they're something that they're not. Let's be real here. South Carolina is one of the least achieving football programs in the history of all of college football. Period. Georgia Tech has more national titles than them. They have a losing record to Duke. Syracuse has more national titles than them. You could go down the list. I mean, even teams that we look at and laugh at on a daily basis, like Kansas and Oregon State, these people have more of a history of winning than South Carolina does. South Carolina has one thing: a 1969 ACC championship game that they won. That's it. And that was during the war, when half of these schools their football team was off fighting a war. They've never accomplished anything, ever. Never won an SEC championship, never won a national title, never won a New Year's Six bowl game. Meanwhile, Clemson's sitting on 24 conference championships, 2 national titles, multiple New Year's Six bowl games, and like I just said before, 69-42-4 record against the Boom Chickens. Just to give you a little bit of an idea how much these two teams hate each other, I mean, you can go back to one of the biggest bench clearing brawls in the history of all of college football back in 2001 or 2002. I want to say it was 2001. Lou Holtz last year as the coach of the Boom Chickens. I mean, that was a bad fight. I mean, there was players that went to the hospital in that game. And as a result, Lou Holtz hates Clemson. I mean, he hated them before that, but he blamed that fight on Clemson for some reason. I have seen with my own eyes and actually have been a participant in actual physical altercations between Clemson and South Carolina fans over football. Fans, not football players, just fans. It's to the point where if I go to a restaurant, if I go to the grocery store and I overhear South Carolina fans talking trash about Clemson, and in my younger days I may have intervened and said something, talked trash back. I don't do it now because there's probably about a 50-50 chance that could escalate to something more than just trash talking. That's how much these two teams hate each other. But here's the reality of the situation, and I'll leave it at this. They say in rivalries you can throw the records out the window. Anybody can win on any given day. That's not true of this game. That's not true of this game this week. Not only is South Carolina a trash can program, but in 2018, they are a trash can team. They like to say, oh, if Clemson was in the SEC, they wouldn't be as good. Well, here's the reality, people. They want to talk about our cupcake schedule. They are the biggest cupcake on our schedule, period. Syracuse is better than South Carolina. Boston College is better than South Carolina. North Carolina State is better than South Carolina. The only team I could think of on our schedule this year, outside of the actual cupcake games like Furman that we play, maybe Louisville, because they are one of the worst 5 teams in America. They're worse than all of them. All of them. They know it. You know it. And I know it. If Clemson doesn't win this game by at least 4 touchdowns, I'd be shocked. To hell with the Gamecocks. Go Tigers. All right, so that brings me to my next point here. Again, this is one of the best weeks in college football. So I'm going to start with just right off the top. There's 4 in-state rivalry games between ACC teams and SEC teams that happen every single year. You got Florida against Florida State. You got Georgia against Georgia Tech. You got Clemson versus South Carolina, and you got Kentucky versus Louisville. Those are 4 games that happen every single year. All in-state rivalries, all ACC versus SEC schools. Now, if you're new here, this may be the first time you've heard this. If you're not new here, then you've heard this 1,000 times. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it for you, just in case you didn't know. Because all the talk about the ACC being so terrible, that the ACC is the worst conference in football. And those 4 games over the past 6 seasons straight, you want to know what the SEC's record is in those games? 4-20. That's right. I didn't stutter. 4-20. If it weren't for Georgia beating the bejesus out of Georgia Tech every year, it might be 21-23. So here's the reality. Florida State has owned Florida in the past 6 years. Clemson has owned South Carolina. Louisville has owned Kentucky. It is what it is, folks. Now, I expect that to change this year. All right. So if you're an SEC homer, you want to start beating your chest. Thank you, Hound Dog. Hold on, let me see what Hound Dog said here. Saw a super chat out of the corner of my eye. He says, "Be sure to watch who's going to make the bowl, aka Tennessee and Vanderbilt." I'm gonna get into Tennessee and Vanderbilt here. Both teams going into the game 5-6 record. It's 4:00 Saturday. It should be epic. Would be a great stream. Yes, I'm looking forward to that game. Actually, that's one of the games I'm looking forward to. I love all these rivalry games. They all mean something, even if they mean nothing in the national landscape of things. They mean something. So I'll be looking forward to that, sir. And thank you for the super chat, by the way. What was I getting at? Oh, the SEC, ACC in-state rivalry games. So I do expect that to change this year. I mean, listen, Florida State and Louisville are 2 of those teams, and they have gone from top 10 programs to bottom 10 programs in the country in the past 2 years. So I fully expect Florida to beat Florida State. Okay, I fully expect Kentucky to beat Louisville. And, of course, I fully expect Georgia to beat Georgia Tech like they normally do. All right? Now, and, of course, I fully expect Clemson to beat South Carolina. But if for some reason – now, I don't think there's any way that Louisville can beat Kentucky because Louisville is – they are that bad. They are just awful. Awful. If somehow – Florida State finds a way to beat Florida. I'm telling you, Florida. If you're a Florida fan on here, and I've got several on here, and I love you, but you will never live that down. Never. if somehow Georgia Tech finds a way to beat Georgia, which I don't expect that to happen, believe me. You know how I feel about Georgia Tech. I think that Georgia is one of the best 5 teams in America. So before you get on here and start typing about, listen, Georgia has no business losing to Georgia Tech. But if that did happen, you would never live it down on the Pigskin Pete YouTube channel. At least not in the next 12 months you wouldn't. I promise. So anyway, having said all that, I have the ACC for the first time in 6 years having a losing record to the SEC in those in-state rivalry games because of how bad Florida State and Louisville are, mainly. All right, so let's go through it. So there's a long list of great games this weekend. I'm going to go through the spreads, and as I'm going through the spreads, I will go ahead and talk about some of these rivalry games and give my opinions on them. First of all, Oregon and Oregon State. Not a lot to say about this. Oregon State is a 16.5-point favorite. Oregon's a 16.5-point favorite, I'm sorry, over Oregon State. Listen, Oregon State's terrible. I mean, they're the bottom 3 programs in America. I think Oregon should win this game by 3 touchdowns. I'm taking Oregon. Virginia and Virginia Tech. Now, this is an interesting game for one reason and one reason only. I didn't look this up, but I want to just going off of memory. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Virginia has lost like 11 or 12 straight, maybe more than that. It might be like 13 or 14. It's been a lot. It's been more than 10. Virginia has lost more than 10 straight to Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech has absolutely owned Virginia in this in-state rivalry. Obviously, 2 ACC teams. Virginia was this close to winning the Coastal Division and facing Clemson and Charlotte, but they blew it, and Pitt found a way to take that title. But listen, despite the fact that Virginia is the second best team in the Coastal Division this year, and Virginia Tech is, I mean, one of the worst teams in the ACC, if not America, Virginia is only a 3.5-point favorite. Now, I don't know why this is. I can't figure it out. I guess it's because they haven't beat Virginia Tech in over a decade that the line is that low. But listen, I'm taking Virginia. I mean, Virginia Tech has got better players, they're better coached, and they're having a hell of a lot better season than Virginia Tech is. Virginia Tech has just completely fallen off. I mean, they've just come apart at the seams. They are really bad. Really bad. I mean, the game's in Blacksburg. I don't care. I'm taking Virginia with the points. Somebody tell me why I'm wrong on that. Next on the list, one of the best games of the week. And like I said before, if I can find a way to stream this one, if I'm not doing family stuff, I will do it if I can. I can't promise anything. Oklahoma and West Virginia. Now, this was living up to probably be a possible play-in game for the playoff for both teams before last week, before West Virginia lost to Oklahoma State. Nonetheless, this game's in Morgantown. If West Virginia does beat Oklahoma, that ruins the Big 12's chance at all of getting in the playoffs. I mean, Oklahoma's only chance to get in the playoff is winning out and hoping that Michigan or Notre Dame lose, or Clemson, or Alabama, right? Somebody in the top 4 has to lose, and Oklahoma has to win out. Oklahoma on the road is a 1.5-point favorite. Now, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, would I take Oklahoma 1.5-point favorite over West Virginia, I would have said, no, I'm taking West Virginia. I thought West Virginia was a better team until I saw them play last week. It's very tempting to take West Virginia's game as a home dog, but I'm going to take Oklahoma because I think Oklahoma can score at will, even against West Virginia. I thought West Virginia had a legit defense until I saw Oklahoma State put up 50 points on them. That changed my mind pretty quickly. So I'm taking Oklahoma with the points. I think Oklahoma. This game might be close, but not 1.5 points close. I think that Oklahoma will win probably, well, by more than 1.5 points, probably more like 3 or 6. It could get out of hand because West Virginia is demoralized. See you later, Ryan Stanfield. Thank you, sir, for stopping in. Next on the list, the Apple Cup. Now, this hasn't been a more meaningful game for Washington State than they've had in a very, very long time. Washington at Washington State. I've got to admit, I have undervalued Washington State as a program all year long. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Pac-12 has been so bad the past few years, including this year. I mean, coming into the season, Washington was the favorite to win the Pac-12 and represent the Pac-12 in the playoff, right? They had an opening game against Auburn, which they played great against Auburn. At that time, we thought Auburn was probably a top 5 team. Found out they aren't. But Washington State, not only have they continued to win, now they have an inexplicable loss against a bad USC team early in the year, but since then, they have just continued to take care of business, beat a lot of really good teams, and these past few weeks, they are just killing teams, killing them. So I'm a believer in Washington State, and I think there's probably a chance, a small chance, be it, that Washington State could jump in the polls tonight to the number 6 spot. I'll get into that in a minute because I'll be live tonight for the rankings thing. But Washington State is a legit football team, an interesting football team too. Nonetheless, I'm taking Oklahoma. I'm sorry, I'm taking Washington to win against the spread. Washington State's -3, favored by 3. I'm taking Washington because I think Washington is a more complete football team. Give us the Gus bus driver. Oh, college football battle 2. How you doing, sir? Jimmy C. How you doing? Next on the list, Pittsburgh and Miami. I'm not going to get too much into this game. I mean, Pitt has already locked up the Coastal Division in the ACC. They're going to be meeting Clemson. They're playing for a New Year's Six bowl game. I mean, provided that they don't beat Clemson, right, in the ACC championship game. I consider this to be the lock of the week, folks. So if you're a bettor, go ahead and mark this down as the lock of the week. Miami is favored against Pitt by 5.5 points. Now, I don't know if Vegas is doing this because they feel like Pitt doesn't have – I mean, Pitt's chances – they don't really have anything to play for. They've locked up the division. They're not going to the playoff, whether or not they win the ACC or not, because they have multiple losses. And Miami has just fallen apart. And that's the only reason I can think that Miami would be a favorite. I think the game's in Miami too. Maybe that's another reason. But 5.5 points, I'm taking Pittsburgh. I mean, I really do think that Pittsburgh is probably the second best team in the ACC. Right? I mean, who after Clemson, who would you put second best in the ACC? It's got to be Pittsburgh. So I'm taking Pittsburgh as an underdog. I can't believe they're an underdog. That's the lock of the week. Rich H says, yeah, Pitt will win. And listen. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care. I'm not hating on Miami. I'm just saying I've been watching these two teams all year, and Pittsburgh's a better team. That's all I'm saying. So I'm picking Pittsburgh as an underdog. I can't believe they're an underdog, but they are. Next on the list, we've already gone over this a little bit, but Kentucky and Louisville. Kentucky is a 17-point favorite over Louisville. Now, if you want to rewind the past 3 years when Lamar Jackson was at Louisville, Lamar Jackson owned Kentucky. To think just in 1 year time, that Kentucky would go from losing year after year to Louisville to being a 17-point favorite in Louisville. How the tides have turned. That's shocking. As much as I would love, as an ACC guy, right? As much as I would love to say, oh, well, Louisville, it's a rivalry game and they've owned Kentucky. Sorry, Kentucky's going to beat the bejesus out of Louisville. This game's going to be, they're going to win by way more than 17 points. Way more. I mean, Louisville doesn't have a shot. I think this game could be somewhere around 40-10. 50-10, something in that range. Kentucky's going to beat the ever-living crap out of Louisville. So take Kentucky. Clemson and USC Junior. Now, I never bet on my own team. I really bet, period, but certainly never bet on my own team when my heart's in it. Clemson is a 26-point favorite. This line has moved all around. It started at 25.5, went up to 27, it's gone back down to 26. Anyway, it'll probably change 3 or 4 more times before the game's actually played. Listen, I've been on YouTube arguing with these Gamecock fans, which I don't even know why I do that. I should know better by now, but I do it anyway. Here's the reality. Some people are calling this a trap game for Clemson. A trap game. Take Clemson with the points. Look at the past 2 years. The past 2 years, well, 2 years ago it was 56-7. We're going for our 5th in a row here. But 2 years ago it was 56-7. Last year was, 34-10. And that game was supposed to be a close game. Hell, a lot of people even picked South Carolina to upset Clemson last year, and we blew them out of the water. Our team this year is way better than it was last year. Their team is not. It's actually worse. So and this game's in Clemson, and last year it was in South Carolina. I mean, all the signs point to Clemson just absolutely scoring as many points as they want to. I mean, I'm not even being trolling right now. I'm not sure, outside of a special teams touchdown, or maybe a pick six or a fumble recovery for a touchdown, some sort of fluke touchdown, I'm not sure that Jake Bentley and that South Carolina offense can score an offensive touchdown against Clemson. I'm not even kidding. So I'd put this game somewhere in the 40-7, 40-6 range. I mean, Clemson's just going to blow them out of the water. I mean, don't tell me it's a rivalry. Anything can happen. No. I mean, you're talking about the second best team in the country by a long shot compared to, well, I don't even know if you could put South Carolina in the top 40 at this point. They're just not good. They're not good. Yeah, with Kelly Bryant. Exactly. Next on the list, Michigan and Ohio State. Talk about the tides turning. Ohio State's a mess. Now, when I was going through all of the different games this week that I could possibly stream for, there's a lot of them on here that would have been good ones. But let's be real. Everyone's coming down on Ohio State because of the Urban Meyer thing, because of just everything that's going on, and Michigan being so great this year. Here's the reality. These are the two highest ranked teams playing each other this week. Ohio State's in the top 10, and will stay there tonight, I think. And, of course, Michigan's in the top 4. This game is not only for who goes to the Big Ten championship to face Northwestern, but it's also a de facto. I mean, these next 3 weeks for both Michigan and Ohio State are all playoff games. The playoffs have already begun. People who want to expand the playoffs to 6, 8, 12, 16 teams, the playoffs start this week for these two teams. Neither team can lose, and if they win out, they're in the playoff, in my mind. Both of them. Even put Ohio State in that conversation. If Ohio State beats Michigan and then beats Northwestern and finishes the season 12-1, Big Ten champ winners, they're in the playoff. Period. So this is a huge game. And despite the fact that Michigan looks dominant and Ohio State looks inept, they have the same record, and they both control their own destiny. And this game is in the shoe. So Michigan is favored by 4 points on the road in Ohio State, which is pretty shocking considering the fact that Harbaugh has never beat Urban Meyer. It's not shocking considering the way that the two teams look. But I think this game is going to be close. I am picking Michigan to win and cover the 4. I think Michigan will win by at least a touchdown. At least. But I would not be shocked if some sort of upset happened here because of the rivalry and because of the stakes on the line and because of the mental block. So I can't wait. I can't wait to watch this game. I can't wait to call it. And I don't care who wins. I know a lot of you Michigan fans on here have been watching my videos, and I spent a lot of time hating on Michigan. You probably all think I want Ohio State to win so I can laugh at Michigan. No, I don't care. I really don't care. Okay? I'm not rooting for Ohio State. I'm not rooting for Michigan. It is what it is. But I think it's going to be a great game. But take Michigan with the points. Georgia and Georgia Tech. Here's a fun fact for you folks. Paul Johnson is more successful against Georgia than Will Muschamp is. Let that sink in for a minute. All jokes aside, listen, you already know how I feel about the triple option, the high school offense. Hell, not even high school anymore. High schools actually throw it. I mean, the middle school offense might want to go all the way down to Pee Wee, at least to the service academy status. I think Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech are a joke and an embarrassment. I think that they are an embarrassment to the ACC conference. I think they are an embarrassment to Power 5 football. I don't think there's any place in Power 5 football for triple option. I think it's for service academies and group of 5 programs and FCS teams who can't recruit talent. And these Georgia Tech fans come out of the woodwork saying, well, it's hard to defend and you can't, we have to do that here because of the academic standards. Nonsense. Lies. You want to know how I know it's a lie? Because Duke doesn't do that. They're more successful than you. Northwestern doesn't do that. They're more successful than you. Boston College, Virginia, Stanford, UCLA. Should I go on? Georgia Tech thinks they're Harvard. They're not. There are 5 or 6 other teams in the ACC with just as stringent academic schedules as Georgia Tech, and they don't run the triple option. And they're better than you. Not to mention that Georgia Tech won a national champion, or at least split a national championship in the 90s. And there, what was it, 90 or 91? And they didn't run the triple option doing it. They had Calvin Johnson. Remember Calvin Johnson? Don't tell me Calvin Johnson is a Mensa student, Albert Einstein. It's lies. It's excuses. Paul Johnson's a joke. Georgia's favored by 17 points. Now, as much as I would, I'm torn on this, my feelings between this, because I love for the ACC to upset ACC teams. I think I laugh and I think it's funny, but I hate Georgia Tech so much. I hate them. This is a win-win situation for Pigskin Pete. If Georgia Tech beats Georgia, I can laugh and say, well, you lost to a bad ACC team. But if Georgia beats the crap out of Georgia Tech, then I can laugh at Georgia Tech because I hate them. I hate them. I hate them more than I hate Georgia. Way more. Take Georgia with the 17. Georgia Tech's terrible. What's up, P Digits? Bradley Aarons, Lee Smith. Welcome to the stream. I'm sure if you're here, you're amazing and fantastic. Otherwise, you would not be here. Dennis Wilson. Didn't you lose to Georgia Tech, Dennis Wilson? What are you talking about, sir? I mean, come on, man. You're an embarrassment, too. North Carolina and North Carolina State. North Carolina State's only a 7-point favorite at home against North Carolina. North Carolina's, I mean, aside from Louisville, they're the second worst team in the ACC. They've won 3 games in 2 years. 3 games in 2 years. Combined. I'm not talking about 3 games each year for 2 years. I'm talking about they've won 3 games in the past 2 years. And they're only a 7-point underdog to NC State at NC State? Take NC State with the points. This game won't be close. LSU and Texas A&M. Now listen. Can somebody explain this to me? This is another one. Whenever I see lines like this, I get confused. LSU and Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M has never beat LSU since they joined the SEC, right? LSU has been highly ranked all year. They're ranked in the top 10 right now, or have been. Probably still will be this week. Texas A&M has 3 losses, and I don't know what they're ranked. Maybe in the top 25, but barely. Texas A&M is favored in this game by 2.5 points. Can somebody explain this to me? Did Jimbo Fisher get a hangnail? Has he been seeing Urban Meyer's doctor? What's going on? What am I missing? Now listen, I think that Texas A&M is a good team. I think that Texas A&M has a really good chance of actually beating LSU this year. But just based on everything I just said, how is A&M favored in Vegas? What am I missing here? I agree. LSU should not be ranked in the top 10. But you've got to there's still something to be said for your record, who you've beat, who you've lost to, your history against the team. I mean, all these things have to come into the picture here. And the fact of the matter is, I'm just shocked to see that A&M's favored. That's all. And I noticed on my little piece of paper here, when I wrote all these down, I didn't pick that game. I forgot to go back and pick it because that was one I left blank. Like, I think that A&M can win the game. I think that LSU is overrated. But even again, I'm going against my own better judgment here and thinking that that A&M's going to beat LSU. I mean, I think I'm going to have to take LSU in this game. As much as I don't want to, yeah, I'm going to take LSU. As an underdog, I mean, against the points. Sorry. I mean, listen, they beat the bejesus out of Georgia, and Georgia is better than A&M, right? Can we all agree on that? Can we all at least agree that Georgia is a hell of a lot better than Texas A&M? I think they are. And, I mean, they put it all over Georgia. So I just have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen. Now, again, that's a tough game to pick. I wouldn't bet it if I was betting. I'm taking LSU. I don't know what to tell you. Next on the list, Notre Dame and Southern California. Now, this is another mind-boggling spread here because this game's in Southern California, which I don't think matters. Southern California is below 500. They're a 5-6 football team. 5-6. They're really bad. Even by Pac-12 standards, they're not good. And that's saying a lot. Notre Dame, on the other hand, I think is a legit football a playoff contender. I've come around. I've seen enough. I always thought they were good enough to make the playoffs anyway. I'm still not convinced that they can win in the playoffs, but I think that they're still one of the top 4 teams in the country. They will make the playoff. They will beat USC without a problem. But I think that some of these teams that Notre Dame has had close games with are better than Southern California. The only thing I can even imagine that Southern Cal has going for them, and I wouldn't put home field advantage on that list, maybe 2 or 3 points at the most, a home field advantage, is the fact that they don't have anything to play for. I mean, they don't have anything to lose. They're playing for a bowl game. That's really all they're playing for. and Notre Dame has everything to lose. But I think that the fact that Notre Dame has everything to lose is going to make them play that much harder. I mean, they don't have a conference championship game. So if they lose this game, they're out of the playoff. And so they know that. And I think they're going to destroy USC. I mean, I just think they're going to – it'll be like Syracuse or worse. That's what I'm anticipating. So 10.5 points, I'm taking Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame wins by 2 or 3 touchdowns. 10.5 points not enough. Take Notre Dame. Alabama and Auburn. The Iron Bowl. Man, this rivalry has gone downhill lately, hasn't it? But Peete, how can you say that? Auburn beat Alabama last year, and Alabama went on to win the national championship. Similar to South Carolina and Clemson. Listen, Alabama's better than they were last year. I think we can all agree on that. Auburn isn't even half as good as they were last year. They've regressed. And I would venture to say, I know these two teams hate each other, and the fan bases may disagree with me, but as an outsider looking in, I'd venture to say that Alabama has a bigger rivalry right now with Clemson than they do Auburn. I'd venture to say that Alabama has a bigger rivalry right now with somebody like Georgia or LSU than they do Auburn. Even teams they don't play on an annual basis on their schedule. Auburn's no good. And some people are saying that this could be a trap game for Alabama because they're looking ahead. No. When you have a team coached by Nick Saban, who has aspirations of winning another national title, you don't. There's no such thing as a trap game. Period. Alabama will beat Auburn by as much as they want to beat them by. I'd say 30 or 40 points. Take Alabama. They will roll Auburn. Auburn's got nothing. The only thing Auburn has is a good defensive line. Outside of that, they've got nothing. They've got no running game. I mean, their quarterback is terrible. And that's it. I mean, yeah. Last but not least, and this is another shocking line that I need help with from some of you to figure out why this line is what it is. Florida and Florida State. Now listen, I got to give credit where credit's due. I'm not going to give you too much credit because you've earned for me to take some of that credit back over the course of the season. But considering where Florida was this time last year and where they are this year, they are much improved. It's not hard to improve from where you came from last year. Last year, they were just absolutely horrible. But they're a good team. I think they're a team that's going to get better next year and the year after. I think that Dan Mullen is a good coach. I mean, as much as we like to rag on Dan Mullen, he's an improvement over both Will Muschamp and Jim McElwain. That's all there is to it. Is Dan Mullen ever going to get Florida in the spot where they're competing for playoffs and national championships? I don't know. I don't think so. But who knows? Florida State. Florida State. Florida State. Florida State and Louisville are single-handedly responsible for making the ACC look so friggin' terrible. Because let's be real here. Clemson's holding up their end of the bargain. These other teams like Boston College and Duke, right? Even NC State. I mean, these teams are performing what you would think they would do or better. I mean, listen, nobody ever expected Duke to be a legitimate team. Same thing with NC State, Boston College. I mean, these teams are good football teams. They're not dominant football teams. They're not top 10 programs, but they're good top 25 caliber football programs. Florida State has been a top 5, top 10 program for 30-plus years straight. And look at them now. Look at them now. Embarrassing. An embarrassment to the conference. An embarrassment to college football. Florida is only a 5.5-point favorite against Florida State. Florida is ranked. What's Florida State ranked? Do the rankings go that low? I mean, they've got to be ranked in the hundreds. There's only 130 teams in in Division I football. Florida State's got to be up around 100, right? Or worse? How is this only a 5.5-point game? I mean, take Florida. I think that Dan Mullen could put on a helmet and go out there at quarterback and beat Florida State. Florida State's terrible. That's it for my betting lines there. Let's get into the comments here. I know I missed a lot. Snoop Dogg might show up at the USC game and pull it off. What if the committee surprised the world and put Clemson at number 1? You know what? That's not going to happen. But you know what might happen, or at least I've heard some people say it might happen. And I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. But people saying that Notre Dame could jump Clemson into that 2 spot because of their dominant win over Syracuse. Well, I just don't think that's going to happen for a lot of reasons. I mean, Clemson had a dominant win over their opponent as well. So I don't see anybody getting jumped in that capacity. The real question, and I'm not going to get into it too much right now because, like I said, I'm going to do a stream tonight for the selection committee. But we did see West Virginia lose, right? We did see a struggle win by Ohio State. They were in the top 10. Will they fall? I don't think they'll fall because of West Virginia's struggles. The other question is, will Washington State jump up a couple of spots and maybe surpass Oklahoma? Because like I said before, Washington State, you could say all you want to about who they played all year. But they're playing better defense than Oklahoma is, and they're destroying their opponents. So there is a small chance. I'm not sure. I have to really look into it before this next stream starts. But there is a small chance that I think that Wazoo could maybe move to that 6th spot. I expect Georgia to stay at 5, and I expect Michigan to stay at 4, and I expect Notre Dame to stay at 3, Clemson 2, Alabama at 1. But 6 through 10 is going to be. There's going to be some movement. Well, we know there's going to be movement already because West Virginia lost. But there might be some people getting jumped in there. And I think that Washington State might deserve to be at that number 6 spot ahead of Oklahoma. Will I be streaming on Thanksgiving Day? No, I won't. I got too much going on Thanksgiving Day. There's a small chance I might do something on Friday for the Oklahoma and West Virginia game. Possibly. I can't commit to that right now, though. I'll let you guys know. Kentucky will cover and then some. I agree 100% with that. SEC Dog, good afternoon to you, sir. He says Clemson looks the best right now. Bama should fall to the 2nd. So, yeah. So, I mean, I can sit here and kiss Alabama's ass till the cows come home. And I'm not hating on Alabama. I still think that they should probably deserve to be at number 1. Should stay there. But are we going to just ignore? Now I realize I saw the game. I saw the end score. It was 50 to something, right? Alabama and the Citadel. But, I mean, come on, guys. Listen, 10 to 10 at halftime against the Citadel. The Citadel is a 4-win FCS team. They aren't even good in the FCS. I mean, it is what it is. They had almost 200 yards rushing. Maybe it was over 200 yards rushing against Alabama's defense in the first half in Tuscaloosa. Now, that's got to be alarming if you're an Alabama fan. And even if you're an Alabama fan and you don't want to admit that there's some sort of weakness on your team, I know deep down that you really know that there is, if you're really being real with yourself. I'm sorry, there is. Now, you came out and did what you needed to do in the second half and blew them out like you should have. I mean, you should have won that game 80-0, if you want to be honest. But there's no excuse for 30 minutes of a football game to be tied with the Citadel. The Citadel's not a good football team. They're not. I'm sorry. There's no excuse for it. None. So all that did to me was reassure the fact that Alabama's definitely beatable when they play an elite team. Now, Alabama might go undefeated and win the national title and be the first team to ever go 15-0. I would not be shocked by that. It would not surprise me. But I'm here to tell you, they are definitely beatable. And it's not, I mean, there's not a question about it. They're beatable. Mel and Matt says we don't see option teams every year. I'm sorry, that's not an excuse, sir. It's not. Listen, Georgia Tech is an option Power 5 team. Citadel is a military FCS team. I mean, literally every single player that plays on Citadel's team would not make the practice squad at Alabama. That's the difference in talent. I understand the option is something that you're not used to. It's not an excuse. It's just not. And you beat the bejesus out of them, in the long run. But for 30 minutes, you struggled with them. It is what it is. Just be real with yourself. There's no excuse for it, sir. There's just not. I'm sorry. And like I said before, Alabama, that doesn't mean Alabama's terrible. It doesn't mean Alabama's not going to win the title. They still might. It wouldn't shock me. But we all saw it, man. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. It is what it is. Where do I rank last night's game as the best games I've ever watched? He's talking about the Kansas City and the Rams game. That was awesome. And I heard a lot of people saying on the radio today, well, people say, these 50-50 games, 100-point score, that's not real football. There's no defense being played. Hell, there was 3 defensive touchdowns and like 5 interceptions and multiple fumbles recovered. I mean, there was defense played in that game. That game was awesome. I mean, I normally on these Monday night football games, I go to bed like at halftime because I have to get up early and I can't stay awake for them. I was riveted. The game was awesome. I put it right up there in the top 3 or 4 football games I've ever seen in my life at any level. It was exciting. And I don't care. Patrick Mahomes threw 6 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles lost. He is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Rick H. says, that's why I say UCF could put 40 on Bama. Hold on, let me see what he says here. Bama would win 48-40, but UCF could not run with them. I'm not going to get into the UCF thing. I think that UCF could score on anybody in America. However, I think what you would see is not something similar to the Citadel, because obviously UCF and Citadel are not the same level. UCF is a legit team. Citadel's not. But when it comes to hanging with a team like Clemson or Michigan or Georgia or Alabama or any of these top 10 teams, that UCF would hang with them for 2 or 3 quarters, and they just can't hang with them for 4. That's the way I feel. Now, I think that UCF's a very good team. We're going to see UCF play a really good, and most likely they're going to go undefeated and make another New Year's Six bowl game, right? whoever they play this year. Last year, I feel like Auburn sort of overlooked UCF, but they won't be overlooked by whoever they play this year, because UCF has not. You can't say that UCF is flying under the radar right now. Everybody knows who they are. Everybody knows what they're about. So whoever they play, whether it's Oklahoma or LSU or Georgia or whoever in a New Year's Six bowl game, they won't take UCF lightly, and I think UCF will get exposed in the New Year's Six bowl game. Now, if they go out and beat a Georgia or an LSU or an Oklahoma or something, well, that will change my mind. Until then, I'm not buying into it. Lee Smith says his biggest concern about the Dogs is the defense. Your biggest concern about your Dogs should be the defense. It should be the fact that you have no pass rush. Georgia has the least amount of sacks in all of the SEC. All of the SEC. That's concerning, which is a big difference from last year. Last year, they were at the top of that list, or up towards the top. And the other thing that Georgia should be concerned about is the fact that they don't really have a dynamic down-the-field passing game, or at least one that we know of. I know that Fromm can. I know that Fields can, but they haven't really shown us that they can do that on a consistent basis against elite defenses throughout the year. And that's what you're going to have to do if you face Alabama or Clemson or Oklahoma or anybody. Well, forget Oklahoma. They have no defense. Or Michigan or somebody like that down the road. You're going to have a legitimate downfield passing game against those elite type defenses, and we just don't know if they do. I'm not saying they don't. We just don't know if they do. Yeah, I know Fields. I'm sure he did. Why isn't Fields starting? There's my question for you. And I'll leave you with that question because I have to get off. But I will be back on. So tonight the selection show starts at 7. I'll be back on right around 6:45, and we can watch the selection show together and chop it up more. So just less than 2 hours away. I'll be back on. Thank you, everybody, for stopping in. Thank you for everybody who donated to the Super Chats. I really appreciate that. If you want to support the show through Patreon instead of Super Chat, you can hit the link in the description of this video. Thanks to all the moderators. Thanks to everybody else who stopped in. If you're new here, please hit the like and subscribe button. Yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you guys very soon in a couple hours. Thanks for stopping in. Big Sam Peete checking out.